Ever wondered how ancient humans dealt with sickness when there were no doctors, no hospitals, no medicine, and no way to even call for help? Think about the last time you got sick. Maybe you had a fever. Maybe your stomach hurt. Maybe you broke a bone. And what did you do? You probably took some medicine, maybe went to the doctor, got an x-ray, took a pill, got better. Now imagine doing all of that with absolutely nothing. No pills, no clinics, no painkillers, no surgery rooms, no bandages from a store, no medical training, nothing but your hands, some plants, and whatever your parents taught you. That was the reality for 300,000 years of human life. And here's the wild part. They survived anyway. Not just survived. They figured out things that still blow scientists' minds today. So why does this matter to you right now? Because every time you swallow a pill, every time a doctor stitches a cut, every time a nurse checks your blood pressure, you're experiencing the end result of a journey that started hundreds of thousands of years ago in caves and forests where people had to figure out medicine completely from scratch. And understanding how they did it will make you look at your own healthcare very differently. So let us go back all the way back to the very beginning of human medicine. Okay, so first things first, what kinds of sickness were ancient humans dealing with? Well, pretty much everything we deal with today, just with zero treatment options. They got fevers, they got infections, they broke bones falling out of trees or getting stomped by animals. They had toothaches so bad that archaeologists have found ancient skulls where people clearly drilled into their own teeth trying to relieve the pain. They suffered from parasites, from food poisoning, from wounds that would not stop bleeding, and one of the biggest killers, getting hurt during a hunt. Imagine tracking a mammoth or a wild bison, getting close, throwing your spear, and then having that animal turn around and charge you. Broken ribs, gored sides, crushed legs. This was not rare. This was Tuesday. So what did they do? Well, the very first thing they did was probably the same thing you do when you get hurt. They stopped and held the wound. Sounds simple, but that basic instinct, applying pressure to a bleeding wound, that is actually correct first aid. It works, and ancient humans figured that out completely on their own. From there, they learned by watching each other, watching animals. And this is one of the most fascinating parts of prehistoric medicine that almost nobody talks about. Ancient humans watched sick animals heal themselves. They noticed that when a sick bear ate a specific type of grass, the bear got better. They saw that certain birds rubbed particular plants on their feathers. They watched deer eat specific leaves after being wounded, and they copied those behaviors. This is called zoopharmacognosy, which is just a fancy science word for animals self-medicating. And researchers believe this is how humans first discovered medicinal plants. They did not read a textbook. They watched the animals, and then they tried it themselves. Now, over hundreds of thousands of years, ancient humans built up an enormous library of plant knowledge. Which plants stop bleeding, which ones reduce fever, which ones kill pain, which ones cause more harm than good. And here is something truly remarkable. Archaeologists discovered evidence of humans using medicinal plants going back at least 77,000 years ago in South Africa, where beds of plants with known medicinal properties were found in ancient sleeping sites, not for sleeping on for their medicine-like effects 77,000 years ago. That is older than the pyramids by tens of thousands of years. Plants like willow bark were used to reduce pain and fever. And here is the incredible connection. Willow bark contains salicin, which is the same active compound that modern scientists used to create aspirin in 1897. Ancient humans were using aspirin thousands of years before modern chemistry even existed. They also used garlic, which has genuine antibacterial properties. They used honey, which actually kills bacteria due to its chemical composition. They used turmeric, which modern science now confirms has anti-inflammatory effects. They were not guessing randomly. They had real knowledge built up over thousands of generations of trial and error. Now, let us talk about the people in charge of all this knowledge. Every ancient community had one. The shaman, also called a medicine man or medicine woman or a witch doctor depending on the culture, but the job was essentially the same everywhere across the entire ancient world. The shaman was the doctor, the therapist, the priest, and the emergency room all rolled into one person. They knew which plants healed which ailments. They performed ceremonies to calm people who were sick and panicking. They set broken bones. They cleaned wounds. They delivered babies. They were the most educated person in the entire community. And here is something important that modern people often miss. The ceremonies and chanting and rituals that the shaman performed were not just superstition. They actually worked, just not in the way people thought. When you are sick and terrified and a trusted authority figure performs a calming ritual around you, your stress levels drop, and when your stress levels drop, your immune system actually functions better. Your body heals faster. Scientists today call this the placebo effect and the stress-immune connection. Ancient shamans figured it out completely intuitively. Now here is where ancient medicine gets genuinely jaw-dropping. They did surgery, real surgery. Approximately 1,500 examples of a procedure called trepanation have been found in the prehistoric archaeological record. Trepanation is when you drill a hole into a person's skull. Yes, a hole in the skull, while the patient is awake with stone tools. The earliest known successful trepanation was performed around 8,000 years ago. And here's the part that is almost impossible to believe. The person survived. We know this because the bone shows signs of healing around the hole. The skull grew back. The person lived. Archaeologists have found skulls with not one but two separate trepanation holes on the same patient, both healed, meaning the person survived two separate skull surgeries with stone tools thousands of years before the invention of anesthesia. Why did they do it? They believed that drilling into the skull allowed evil spirits causing headaches or seizures or mental illness to escape from the head. Wrong explanation, genuinely effective procedure for relieving certain types of brain pressure. They were doing neurosurgery before they had a word for the brain. And they were not the only ones doing impressive surgery. Prehistoric communities were setting broken bones using clay casts, basically the same concept as a modern plaster cast, just made from clay instead. They were using the pincers of large ants to close wounds, holding the ant over the cut until it bit down and then snapping the body off, leaving the pincers clamped shut like living stitches. They were amputating infected limbs to stop infections from spreading. One of the earliest confirmed amputations was performed around 31,000 years ago in Borneo, and the patient survived long enough afterward to live a full life. 31,000 years ago, successful amputation, no anesthesia, no antibiotics, stone tools. Let that sink in for a moment. Now, of course, not everything they tried worked. They had no understanding of bacteria or viruses. They had no way to know that germs caused infection, so infections were one of the biggest killers of prehistoric life. A small cut in the wrong place could become infected and turn fatal in days. They also had zero defense against epidemic diseases. When a new disease swept through a community, they were completely helpless against it in ways that modern medicine no longer is, and childbirth was extremely dangerous. Without modern medicine, many women did not survive giving birth. The mortality rate for both mothers and newborns was staggeringly high compared to today. So, life was not easy. It was genuinely brutal and short in many ways. But here is what is remarkable. Despite all of that, they kept trying. They kept learning. They passed their knowledge down through generations by word of mouth when writing did not even exist yet. Every herb they discovered, every technique they developed, every surgical procedure they figured out through trial and error became part of an oral tradition passed from parent to child, from shaman to apprentice for thousands of years. That knowledge never disappeared. It evolved, it traveled, it became the foundation of Egyptian medicine, of Greek medicine, of Chinese medicine, of Ayurveda, which eventually became the foundation of modern medicine. Every doctor alive today is standing on the shoulders of a shaman in a cave who figured out how to use willow bark to stop a fever 70,000 years ago. That is not a poetic exaggeration. That is literally true. So the next time you take a painkiller, think about that. Think about the long chain of human curiosity, observation, courage, and compassion that had to happen across hundreds of thousands of years, just so that pill could end up in your hand. Ancient humans had nothing. No books, no labs, no degrees, no technology, but they had something that has always been the engine of human progress. They had the determination to figure it out anyway. And because they did, you're here today. If this made you think differently about the history of medicine and how tough ancient humans actually were, drop a comment below that says, "I would not survive back then." Let us see how honest everyone is. And if you want more videos like this, real history that actually matters, hit subscribe. New video coming very soon.